Look at my son. This is the family you could never give me.
Mr. Bennett, we need to talk about the DNA test.
The day my ex-husband called me a failure in the middle of a hospital, he had one hand on my former best friend's shoulder and the other on a little boy he believed was his son. He smiled at me and said, "Leaving you was the best decision I ever made." 2 minutes later, a doctor stepped out of the elevator. My former best friend dropped the baby bottle in her hand, and before that afternoon was over, my ex-husband would learn that the life he had destroyed me to build was based on a lie. Hello. My name is Mallory Bennett, and this is the story of how the two people I trusted most betrayed me, blamed me for a problem that was never mine, and finally discovered that some lies do not stay buried forever. A year earlier, I would have cried if Raid spoke to me that way. That day, I only looked at him. We were standing on the 4th floor of Mercy Harbor Medical Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and coffee. Nurses moved behind the reception desk. An elderly man sat near the window with a newspaper folded across his knees. I had come to the hospital for one reason. I was waiting for Dr. Conrad Ames. Reed did not know that, neither did Camille. Camille Dorsey had been my best friend for almost 15 years. She knew what kind of tea I drank when I was sick. She knew the name of the song my father used to play when I was a child. She had held my hand after fertility appointments and told me that I was stronger than I believed. And now she stood beside my ex-husband with a 1-year-old boy resting against her chest. Reed looked expensive, confident, and pleased with himself. "Mallory," he said, almost laughing. "I didn't expect to see you here." I could hear the cruelty hiding beneath the polite words. "I have an appointment," I said. His eyes moved toward the maternity wing sign. Then he smiled, still chasing miracles. Camille looked down, but not because she was ashamed. I saw the tiny smile she tried to hide. Raid placed a hand on the little boy's back. "This is Noah," he said. "To my son." The word son came out with special emphasis. He wanted it to hurt. Then he leaned closer. "You know, divorce gives you perspective. Leaving you was the best decision I ever made. I spent years thinking I would never have a family." He glanced at Camille. "Turns out I just had the wrong woman." The hallway became quieter. Maybe people were listening. Maybe I only imagined it. A year earlier, those words would have cut through me. For 4 years, Raid and I had tried to have a baby. 4 years of appointments. 4 years of blood tests, injections, calendars, procedures, hope, and disappointment. Every month began with optimism and ended with me sitting on the bathroom floor. At first, Raid said we were a team. Then he stopped coming to appointments. Then he started saying things like, "How much longer are we going to keep doing this?" Eventually, the word "we" disappeared. It became my problem, my body, my failure. And Camille was always there to comfort me. At least, that was what I believed. 3 days after our final failed treatment, Reed put divorce papers on our kitchen table. I remember staring at his signature. He had already signed. That detail hurt more than I expected. It meant the conversation was not a conversation at all. His decision had already been made. "I can't live like this anymore," he told me. "Like what?" "Waiting for a life that's never going to happen." I asked him whether he still loved me. He looked away. That was my answer. The divorce became ugly very quickly. Raid had managed most of our finances. We also owned a small medical supply company together. I had helped build it from the beginning, but he handled the contracts and accounts. During the divorce, documents appeared showing that my ownership interest was smaller than I remembered. Expenses I had never approved carried my electronic signature. And somehow Camille, who worked as finance director for the charitable foundation I had started years before, always seemed to support Raid's version of events. I was exhausted, I was grieving, and I signed an agreement my attorney warned me was unfair because I wanted the nightmare to end. Raid kept the house. He kept control of the company. I kept enough money to start over, and Camille kept pretending to be my friend for exactly 11 more days. Then she stopped answering my calls. 6 weeks later, I saw a photograph online. Raid and Camille were together, not standing beside each other at a party. Together. His arm was around her waist. Her head was on his shoulder. The caption said, "Tss." Sometimes the right person was there all along. I threw my phone across the room. 3 months after that, they announced they had a baby. The timing made no sense. I counted the months once, then twice. Then I stopped counting because I already knew what it meant. Their relationship had begun before my marriage ended, maybe long before. For weeks, I barely left my apartment except to work. Then one rainy Tuesday, something happened that changed everything. I received a large envelope from the fertility clinic we had used. I had requested my complete medical file after the divorce, but the clinic had sent only part of it. I had complained twice and eventually forgotten about it. This envelope contained the missing laboratory records. Most of the pages meant nothing to me. Numbers, codes, abbreviations. Then I found one report with a yellow correction notice attached. The patient identification number was mine, but the sample number was not. I stared at it for nearly an hour. The next morning, I called the clinic. The receptionist told me the physician who had handled our case had retired. I asked to speak with the laboratory. She said someone would call me back. No one did. I called again and again. Finally, a laboratory supervisor named Diane agreed to review the record. She called me 2 days later. Her voice was careful. Mrs. Bennett, I think you should have an independent specialist review this. My stomach tightened. Why? There was a pause. Because there are inconsistencies. That word became the beginning of my new life. Inconsistencies. I contacted Dr. Conrad Ames, one of the most respected reproductive medicine specialists in the state. I expected him to give me 15 minutes. He gave me nearly 2 hours. He reviewed the report silently. Then he removed his glasses. Who told you that you were infertile? My husband. Our doctor. Everyone? Did you ever personally see the original diagnostic report? I thought about it. No. Did you ever meet with the laboratory without your husband? No. Did your husband have testing done? Yes. Do you have his results? I did not. That was the first moment I understood how completely I had surrendered control of my own medical story. Reed scheduled appointments. Reed collected documents. Reed spoke to doctors. Reed told me what the results meant. I had been so desperate to save our marriage that I never asked why. Ames requested authorization to obtain archived records. Weeks passed. Then he found the first major problem. One of the laboratory reports that had been presented as mine belonged to another patient. The identifiers had been altered on a copy, not on the hospital's original electronic record. On the copy in our personal file, I felt sick. Could this be an accident? I asked. Possibly, he said, but there is more. My hormone levels were normal. My imaging was normal. Nothing in the original data supported the diagnosis Reid had repeated for years. Then Dr. Ames found something stranger. A note in the archived file said that additional testing had been recommended for the male partner. There was no result attached. Did Reid ever mention this? No. Dr. Ames looked at me carefully. Then we need to find out why? That was when the mystery became an investigation. I hired an attorney named Naomi Carter. Naomi was calm in a way that made other people nervous. She did not shout. She did not make threats. She simply asked questions until lies became uncomfortable. She requested records from the clinic, our insurance company, our former attorney, and the medical supply company. Then she asked me something unexpected. Who benefited from you believing you were the problem? I knew the answer immediately. Right. But Naomi shook her head. Think bigger. A Camille. If I believed I had destroyed my marriage, I would leave quietly. If everyone else believed I was unstable and obsessed with infertility, they would accept Reid's story. If I signed away my interests while emotionally broken, Reid would gain control of the company. And if Camille remained inside my foundation, she would have access to financial records I had stopped checking. The betrayal was not only romantic, it was organized. Naomi discovered that 3 months before Reid asked for a divorce, my electronic signature had been used to approve a transfer of company assets into a separate holding company controlled by him. I had never seen the document. Then she found payments from my foundation to a consulting business. The consulting business belonged to Camille's brother. The work described on the invoices had never been performed. More than $200,000 had disappeared over 18 months. I remember sitting in Naomi's office, staring at the total. I thought she was bringing me soup because she loved me. I whispered. Naomi did not answer immediately. Then she said, "People who betray you rarely begin by acting like enemies." That sentence stayed with me. We still needed proof. Not suspicion, not anger. Proof. So I did something Reid never expected. I stayed quiet. I did not confront him. I did not confront Camille. I did not post anything online. I let them believe I was still the broken woman they had left behind. Meanwhile, Naomi worked with a forensic accountant. Dr. Aids continued reviewing my medical records. And I rebuilt my life. I found a new job with a healthcare nonprofit. I rented a small apartment above a bakery. Every morning at 5, I woke to the smell of bread coming through the floorboards. For the first time in years, my home was peaceful. No one criticized my body. No one measured my value by whether I could become pregnant. No one told me that love depended on producing something for them. Then, 6 months into the investigation, Dr. Ames called me. "Mallory, I found the missing test." I stood up so quickly that my chair fell backward. "What test?" Reds. I could barely breathe. And I don't want to discuss this over the phone. That terrified me. I met him the next morning. He placed an old scanned report on his desk. The result was clear. Reid had severe male factor infertility. The probability of natural conception was extremely low. I stared at the page. For years he had blamed me. He had watched me inject medication into my body. He had watched me cry. He had allowed me to believe I was defective, all while knowing that the major fertility problem was his. Could he have misunderstood the result? I asked. Dr. Ames pointed to a note. The physician had discussed the findings with the patient directly. Reid knew. I covered my mouth, but Dr. Ames was not finished. There is something else. He showed me a second document. A request had been made for a corrected copy of my diagnostic report. The The request came through an email address associated with Raid's company. Someone had taken a legitimate medical record, altered the identifying information on another patient's abnormal report, and placed it in the file Raid later used to convince me I was infertile. We could not yet prove Raid personally edited it, but we could prove the document was false. I thought that was the worst truth I would discover. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Naomi called. "We have a problem," she said. "What kind?" "The child's birth date." I closed my eyes. "I already know the affair started before the divorce. That's not what I mean." She explained that if Reed's medical results were accurate, Noah's conception deserved closer examination. I immediately became uncomfortable. Noah's a baby. He has nothing to do with this? "I agree," Naomi said. "We do not involve the child unless necessary." But Camille submitted documents connected to the Foundation's health benefit program. Those documents contain something unusual. What? A blood, type inconsistency. I said nothing. Naomi continued. "It doesn't prove anything, but it raises a question. I refuse to turn a child into a weapon." Whatever Raid and Camille had done, Noah was innocent, so we waited. And then the answer came from Camille herself. Not intentionally. The Foundation's internal audit triggered a legal dispute. Camille's attorney submitted employment and insurance records to challenge our claims. Inside those records was a pediatric form naming another man as Noah's possible biological father. His name was Ethan Cole. I knew that name. Ethan had been Raid's regional sales director. And 6 months before my divorce, Raid had fired him for what he called disloyalty. Naomi found Ethan in Charlotte. At first, he refused to speak. Then she showed him a photograph of Noah. He went silent. Finally, he admitted that he and Camille had been having an affair during the same period Camille was secretly involved with Raid. The perfect new family was not perfect at all. Ethan believed Noah might be his. Camille had told him the child was Reed's and ordered him to stay away. He had, until now. Naomi warned me not to celebrate. We still needed admissible evidence. I wasn't celebrating. I felt strangely sad. Not for Raid, for Noah. Adults had built a maze of lies around a child who had never asked to be part of any of it. Then the hospital called me. Dr. Ames had completed his final review and wanted to meet. That was why I was at Mercy Harbor on the day I ran into Raid and Camille. It was not planned. At least not by me. Raid was there because Noah had a routine pediatric appointment in another wing. And fate apparently has a sense of timing. So there I stood while Raid smiled at me and announced that Camille had given him the family I never could. I looked at the little boy. Then at Raid. "Are you sure about that?" I asked. His smile faded slightly. "What is that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, the elevator doors opened. Conrad Ames stepped out holding a sealed envelope. Camille saw him. Her face changed instantly. The bottle slipped from her hand. It struck the floor and rolled in a slow circle. Raid frowned. "What is wrong with you?" Camille did not answer. Dr. Ames walked toward me. "Mallory," he said. "I'm glad you're here." Raid stared at him. "You two know each other?" Dr. Ames looked at me, and I nodded. He had my permission? "Yes," he said. "I've been reviewing Mallory's case." Raid's expression hardened. "There is nothing to review." Dr. Ames held up the envelope. "Actually, there is." Camille whispered, "Raid, maybe we should go." That was the moment I knew she understood. Maybe she did not know every detail, but she knew enough to be afraid. Raid ignored her. "What did you find?" Dr. Ames answered calmly. Mallory was never infertile. Silence. Real silence. The kind where even distant sounds become sharp. A cartwheel squeaked somewhere down the hall. Raid laughed once. It was a nervous sound. "That's impossible." "No," Dr. Ames said. The records used to support that conclusion were not authentic copies of her original results. Raid looked at me. His face had lost its color. I said, "You knew, didn't you?" He stepped closer. "Mallory, don't do this here. You chose here?" His jaw tightened. Camille picked up the bottle with shaking hands. Then another voice came from behind us. "Mr. Bennett?" It was Naomi. She had arrived for our scheduled meeting with the hospital's legal department. Raid stared at her. He recognized her immediately. My divorce attorney had copied his lawyer on several preservation notices during the previous month. Naomi held a folder against her chest. "Since everyone is here," she said, "this may save us some time." Camille turned toward the elevator. Naomi stopped her with one sentence. "Ms. Dorsey, your attorney has already received the audit findings." Camille froze. Raid looked between us. "What audit?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because for the first time, he was the only person in the room who did not understand what was happening. Naomi explained that the Foundation had completed a forensic review. Unauthorized payments had been traced to Camille's brother's company. Company records also showed that my signature had been used on documents I had never approved. Raid's face shifted from fear to anger. He turned on Camille. "What did you do?" Her eyes widened. "What did I do?" "You told me those transfers were protected." That sentence changed everything. Naomi's expression did not move, but I saw her fingers tighten around the folder. Raid realized what Camille had said. "Stop talking." Camille laughed bitterly. "No, You don't get to do that. You told me Mallory would never look at the records. You said she was too embarrassed to fight. A nurse at the desk glanced toward us. Naomi said quietly, I think this conversation should continue somewhere private. But Raid was no longer listening. He pointed at me. This is revenge. I shook my head. No. Revenge would be destroying your life with a lie. I'm giving you the truth. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. His attorney. He answered. I could not hear every word. I didn't need to. His face told the story. The company's bank had frozen 2 disputed accounts after receiving notice of the fraud investigation. The board had called an emergency meeting, and the foundation had suspended Camille. Raid lowered the phone. For the first time since I had known him, he looked small. Then Camille started crying, not softly, not gracefully. She looked at Raid and said, You promised me none of this could come back on us. He stared at her. She realized her mistake too late. Naomi said, again, I strongly recommend that everyone stop discussing this in a public hallway. Then No began to cry. Everything changed. I looked at him, and all the anger drained out of me for a moment. He was frightened by the voices. Camille held him closer. I stepped back. This isn't his fault, I said. Camille looked at me. For 1 second, she looked like the woman who had once been my friend. Then the elevator opened again. A man stepped out, Ethan Cole. Raid stared at him as though he had seen a ghost. What are you doing here? Ethan did not answer Raid. He looked at Noah, then at Camille. I came because my attorney said the paternity petition was filed this morning. Reid's face went blank. What paternity petition? Camille whispered, Ethan, please. Reid turned slowly toward her. What is he talking about? No one answered. Raid looked at Noah, then at Ethan, then back at Camille. I saw the exact second the possibility entered his mind. No, he said. Camille began crying harder. No. Ethan spoke carefully. I was with Camille during the possible conception period. Raid took 1 step backward. You told me he was mine. Camille reached for him. He pulled away. You told everyone he was mine. Camille's voice cracked. I thought he was. That sentence destroyed the last piece of Raid's certainty. He looked at Dr. Ames, then at me, then at the child he had used 2 minutes earlier to humiliate me. I did not smile. I did not need to. The truth was doing enough. The paternity test was ordered through family court. The result came 3 weeks later. Ethan was Noah's biological father. Raid was not. But that was only the beginning of what Raid lost. The company's board removed him as chief executive while the financial investigation continued. The disputed transfer of company assets was reversed. My ownership claim was reopened after forensic experts concluded that my electronic signature had been used without authorization. Camille was charged in connection with the foundation funds. Her attorney later negotiated an agreement requiring restitution and cooperation with investigators. And Reid, he tried to blame everything on Camille. Then Camille produced emails. Lots of emails. Messages about moving money. Messages about keeping me confused. Messages about making sure I accepted the fertility story. One message from Raid said, as long as Mallory thinks she's the reason we can't have kids, she won't fight the divorce. I read that line once. Then I closed the file. For years I had wondered whether I had imagined his cruelty. There it was in writing. He had not simply stopped loving me. He had used my deepest fear to control me. The civil case took months. Eventually, Raid agreed to a settlement that returned a substantial portion of the assets I had lost in the divorce. He resigned from the company permanently. The board bought out his remaining interest at a reduced value after the legal claims were resolved. My foundation recovered most of the missing money through restitution, insurance, and seized funds. I could have returned as executive director. I chose not to. Instead, I created a new program providing independent patient advocates for women navigating complicated fertility treatment. Not because every doctor or spouse is dishonest, most are not, but because no one should understand her own medical history only through someone else's version of it. As for Noah, the court worked out custody and visitation between Camille and Ethan. I stayed completely out of it. He was a child. He deserved privacy, stability, and a life that was not defined by the mistakes of adults. Months later, I saw Raid one final time. It happened outside the courthouse after our settlement hearing. He was alone. No tailored suit, no confident smile. He looked tired. Mallory, he called. I kept walking. Please. I stopped. He came closer. I know you hate me. I don't. That surprised him. I don't hate you, Raid. He looked almost hopeful. I continued. Hating you would mean you're still taking up space in my life? His face changed. He looked down. I made mistakes? No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a lie and watched me live inside it. I was scared. So was I. He swallowed. I thought if you knew about my results, you'd leave me. I stared at him. And instead, you made me believe I was the one who was broken. He had no answer. Then he said the one thing I never expected. I'm sorry. For years I had imagined hearing those words. I thought they would heal something. They didn't. They were only words from a man who had finally run out of places to hide. I hope you become someone who means that, I said. Then I walked away. A year after that hospital confrontation, my life looked nothing like the life I had once begged to keep. I had a smaller home, a different career, fewer friends. But the friends I had were real. I also learned something surprising. Dr. Ames had been right. I was not infertile. Whether I would ever become a mother was still uncertain, and for the first time, I was okay with uncertainty. My worth was not waiting in a test result. It was not hiding in a marriage certificate, and it was never something Raid had the power to give me or take away. Sometimes people ask whether watching Raid lose his company, his reputation, his relationship, and the child he believed was his felt like revenge. The answer is no. Revenge would have meant becoming like him. What I wanted was simpler. I wanted my name back, my money back, my truth back, and I wanted the people who had used my pain as a weapon to face the consequences of what they had done. They did. The last time I passed Mercy Harbor Medical Center, I remembered that bottle hitting the floor. For a long time, I thought that was the moment Raid's life fell apart. I was wrong. His life began falling apart years earlier, the first time he decided a lie was easier than the truth. The hospital was only where the truth finally caught up with him. And me, I did not walk away as the woman who couldn't give him a child. I walked away as the woman he could no longer control. Because the most satisfying revenge was never watching him lose everything. It was realizing that after everything he had done, he had finally lost me, and I had finally found myself.